had this couch, and this couch smelled terrible. And I've been trying to get rid of this couch for months, but nobody would take the time to help me. And so I went to the garage and I found a saw, and I started cutting my couch into three pieces. And I'm thinking about everything and just getting more and more angry. And I was never an angry person, ever. And so eventually I get this couch cut in pieces, and each piece is really heavy. So I'm like trying to carry it out my door. And after all three of those were thrown, I just remember like collapsing, and it was like a rebirth. I can't even put it into words. It was a feeling of like my soul touched my life for a second and said, "You're meant to be so happy and free, and this is all just pretend, you know?" And
Welcome to the Light the Day podcast, where we explore spiritually transformative experiences. Today, I have a special guest. Today, my guest is Max Lencl. Hi, Max.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
I am so excited to hear more of your story. We have been in a mediumship development class together like over a year ago. We
Yeah.
had started with this class, and it's been a lot of fun, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you. So share a little bit about yourself first, and then we'll go into your story.
Okay. Well, I guess to start off with, most of my life now, I have been a counselor and a therapist for about 13 years. And I guess I've always been someone that was really dedicated to that profession. It was my whole identity and it was everything. And I love that. And and I guess over time, I've learned that the world is made up of so much more than that. And so I'm a very, very different person now. But I
We're
guess I'll
going to
just
go
stop
into
right there.
that. Yeah,
Yes.
that's awesome. Okay. And remind me where you live again?
Right now, I live in Pennsylvania. I'm in Erie,
Pennsylvania.
PA.
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, and if I haven't shared before on this show, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, so it's
That's right.
so super fun. Okay, so let's go back. I want to just touch on like as a child, did you have like a spiritual background? Did you have like a religious background? What was your understanding of spirituality, I guess, as a child,
Hmm.
if
I
anything?
really did. I didn't really have much. I mean, I remember going with friends to their vacation, what was it, Bible school or summer camp, and I would go here and there, but my family really didn't follow a certain religion. We never went to church regularly whatsoever. And I do remember certain moments, especially now as I get older, where I was a little kid but praying, and I remember things would happen. I mean, I'm vaguely getting these memories now. So, I guess I didn't have anything formally. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, anything that you remember that kind of stands out? Like you said, you remember praying and what was that? What was that like as a child? And it's so interesting, isn't it, when we look back on our childhood memories because
Mhm.
we have these experiences and we interpret it a certain way as a child, and then we look back and we go, wait, that
Yeah,
wasn't actually Santa Claus's bells after all.
exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. Now that I think back, there are lots of periods of my life where I would be praying to God a lot, and then I think it would sort of fade away and I would completely forget about it and then it would happen again. Um, and as a little kid, I remember they were probably pretty arbitrary. I remember things like, dear God, if we could just have a snow day today, because I'm up north, if we could just have a snow day, things like that, all the way up to, I hope my dad doesn't come to visit because, he's not so great, and then
Mm,
older and all kinds of things. But it came and went, I guess.
yeah, yeah. So, and I know that you've talked about, kind of having this spiritual awakening, but what was life like before that happened?
I I have a tendency to wear rose-colored glasses, so I'm going to try to be very fair. Before my awakening, like I said, my whole identity was being a counselor. I mean, I literally would spend hours in the library in school by myself reading all these books. And so before life, I was somewhat connected to my family. I was more or less a caretaker for my mom. Um, and, I played guitar and sang, and I would play at these different coffee shops and things like that. And let's see. And I guess life in hindsight wasn't bad, but I do remember periods of really severe depression where it was this kind of exhaustion that I just could never understand until now. Um, and life just seemed like a performance in a lot of ways because I felt like you always have to, obviously, you have to show up and be happy, obviously. And
Mm,
what I didn't realize was a lot of that was my ego. And my spiritual awakening really took all that away.
interesting.
So I see life more realistically now, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So when you talk about your spiritual awakening, what did that look like? What was the catalyst and kind of what was
Mm,
the experience there?
there's a lot, as I guess everybody would say. Um, it's a
I
lot.
can appreciate that.
Yes, I know. Absolutely, you can. I guess in a nutshell, it started probably with a best friend that I had had for a long time. Strangely enough, getting upset that I was dating someone. And it seems like such a small catalyst, and it moved into I had this deep compulsion to leave my job and start my own business as a counselor. But it was a series of these really strong impulses, and it's just so much to try to summarize. But it basically is the process um, of becoming homeless, of being naive in a lot of ways, a lot of people dying in my life at once. I
Wow.
had a near-death experience that was very, very brief. Um, uh, Discovering the more darker side of humanity, uh, and also experiencing pain like I had never known was possible. But through that, it really cracked me open, and I think through that, that's when I started to feel contact with angels, and I started to see energy, and
Wow.
it it was a guiding light when there's absolutely no other lights around. So there's so many more details, but I'll pause for a second.
Yeah. Yeah. Share a little bit about your near-death experience. You mentioned it was brief, but
Hmm.
what happened there?
Basically, this was towards the end, and I had just moved back home after living 3 hours away, and I was exhausted. It was this deep kind of exhaustion, and I decided I wanted to go back to the city that my awakening had happened in to visit a friend. And I go to visit, and he was just a complete jerk. Like, it just reminded me of why I left. And so I was exhausted, and on the way back, I was so tired, I felt like I have to pull over or I'm going to fall asleep. And so I pulled in this gas station, and what I remember was sitting there. thinking, okay, I'm just going to take a little nap. And then as I'm sitting there, it's like all of this darkness came around me, and it was like the light at the end of the tunnel people talk about. And I felt really dizzy and lightheaded, and it was like the light got smaller and smaller. And I had this thought of, if I don't push myself to get out of this damn car right this second, I'm going to die. And I'm too stubborn for that, I guess, or something. So I literally pushed myself out of the car and kind of stumbled to the gas station, and I asked the guy for a 5-hour energy for whatever reason.
Interesting.
And ever since then, my personality has been different, and I feel like something really shifted that I haven't begun to understand, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned being able to see energy um
Mm.
and all these kind of new experiences. Where did that start? What did that look like? What did you think was happening?
Yes, that's a funny story because
Hmm.
this was like the middle of my awakening, I guess. I remember like two of my stepdads had died, my car had been towed, my friend had tried to make my dog run away like 3 times, and I had to go and find her. Like, it was everything. And I was lying on the floor of my office because I had no way to get home. And I was looking up at the ceiling, and all I saw was all these little specks, all these dots, this blurry kind of field. And then, of course, I thought, are you kidding me? On top of everything else, now my vision is going to go, really?
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and so this happened more and more intensely. And I kind of shrugged it off because it would kind of come and go. And then after a few days, I started noticing it wasn't just dots, because they would change, and I would start to see outlines of people or scenes playing out. And then I really thought I was having a psychotic episode. Maybe I was. And sometimes I would see colors, and it progressed from there. And from then on, when I close my eyes at any point, any time of day, I can see a little movie going on. And
Mm,
so that was how it started.
wow. Well, I know that you are extremely intuitive because I've been in class with you and I've seen
So
you
are
tune
you.
in. I've seen you tune into things and mention things that, you know, the rest of us aren't picking up on and you're accurate and very in tune. So with with kind of no spiritual background or no understanding, like what did you do with all that? Like what did that look like?
Yes, it was a lot. It was literally my, I think it was my soul and my higher self being very wise and savvy. Who knew, you know? And basically put me in a position where I was so helpless. I had absolutely no idea why everything was going terribly. I had no option but to pay attention to what was going right. So I started, forget what started. I started seeing symbols and repeating numbers, of course, and then I listened to my first guided meditation with angels, and I felt so much better. And then the signs got stronger, and so I started listening to those more. Then I started to see energy, and I started learning about um, energy medicine and meridians, and that's a whole other thing.
Yeah,
Um, it was overwhelming for quite a while. Yeah.
I bet it was. I bet it was. Share with us a little bit about your understanding of angels and what your experience has been there.
In front of the expert. Oh my gosh. All right. Well,
We're all
my
experts in our own experiences, Max.
that's fair. That's fair. My experience has been progressive, and the first thing that comes to my mind is I know I you know how sometimes you just know that you know that you know? I know I have a connection somehow to Archangel Metatron. I
Oh,
know that they're not really comprised of gender, but he is my guy, I guess. And I just have had lots of experiences with him. But my understanding of angels is that there are different levels, sort of. Humans come up with all kinds of categories, right?
yeah.
But they are
We're really
essentially,
good at that, aren't we?
yes, this one's better than that one. But I essentially understand them as being energy, beings of energy that are very, very high vibrational, that can influence, our energy, but we have to ask them for the help. And to a degree, each archangel at least has certain certain attributes or affiliations. And my summary for me personally is that they can provide comfort, that they can assist with healing, and uh, sometimes just remarkable evidence. Like once I was on the highway and I saw like 3 or 4 cars that were 7777, like 4444, all together. Um,
Wow.
and I've seen healing happen, especially with my own dog, related to praying with angels. So that's my very humble summary.
Oh,
Um,
that's good. That's great. That's a great introduction to angels and a great explanation of what they are. And yeah, I 100% agree with you. I'm curious, um, when you feel that connection with Metatron, what is that like for you? Or how did that happen that you started to recognize that that's who it was?
yeah, that's a great question. For some reason, I was extremely drawn to the infinity sign, and I always have been. And at that time in my life, I stumbled upon something, I guess, somewhere they called the infinity arrow. I wish I could draw it. Maybe you've seen it. It looks like an infinity sign, but one end is an arrow and the other is the end. And it's described as sometimes we have to be pulled back in order to be released forward infinitely. And I started seeing that everywhere. And when I would do meditations that had Archangel Metatron in them, I felt such a warmth. One time I literally heard very clearly, uh, I got you, buddy. It was very clear. I get goosebumps now thinking about it and get kind of tearful. Um, wow, yeah. And
Awesome.
there's just been lots of similar experiences like that.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I love experiences like that because in this earthly life that we're living with all the ups and downs and the backs and forths and the lefts and the rights and the all over,
Mhm. Yes.
it's really nice to center ourselves on those memories, when we have that kind of very clear message and to be able to
Hmm.
go back to that and just like you said, like you were feeling it just talking about it and it
Hmm.
just takes us right back into that energy. It grounds us, it like reminds us of who we really are.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know it's a little outside of our topic today, but I would love to know if you have a interaction with angels like that stands out to you. I mean, do you have one you could share briefly?
Well, as you say that, I've had so many that I didn't even recognize that's what was happening.
Hmm.
And I share this pretty frequently, but when my kids passed away and the car was rolling, I heard that voice that told me to bring my arm in, and there was no doubt there were angels all over, and I don't know how in the world I had the presence of mind to bring my arm in, but within the next 3 months, I learned about a woman who had lost her arm in a rollover accident, in a similar accident. And then a couple years later, I met another woman who had lost her arm in a rollover accident. And while that wasn't meant to be part of my experience, I lost my children that
Yeah.
day, and losing my arm would have been a whole nother layer of challenges for me. So it's like, even in the and I just want to point out that sometimes I think that angels only show up in those really distressful situations, but they're with us all the time. So,
I think that also.
but thanks for the question. I'm curious about um how, if you were to describe Metatron, and I know this is an impossible question, because it's an energy, right? It's an experience. It's not easy to describe it. But I'm just curious what your description of Metatron is, or if you have um, any ideas about Metatron's specific roles or anything along those lines. I know
Yes.
everyone would love to hear about it.
Oh, absolutely. Um, it feels very intuitive in the moment, so put on the spot, I probably won't remember much, but my understanding is he, as humans have described him, as being one of the original archangels and being associated a lot with the crown chakra and the third eye chakra and the infinity symbol and lots of meditations I do, they talk about bringing down, what is it, the solar grid, I believe. Is that right? Something like that. Bring down the solar grid that Archangel Metatron oversees, and he oversees thought and um, mental capacity, and there's a protective element there.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to share is I don't really know anything. Let me just say this, the more I know, I don't really know anything about anything, I swear.
Well,
But
I think, Max, I just want to say we're all in the same boat, right?
yeah,
It's like I always tell people, and that's why I love these stories, because they're so important. Your story is so important. Your experience is so important, because there's somebody that's listening to this that has had an experience like yours. I'm getting really teary. I don't know
yeah,
why. But there's someone that's had an experience like yours, where all of a sudden you're seeing things, you're experiencing things that don't make a lot of sense, and you're helping people to move along. Like, you know how hard it was for you to go from having these experiences to then move to a better understanding of them. You're actually creating more understanding for the next person. And I often think of it in terms of, like, I don't know if you remember that old Indian proverb, I don't know, story about the blind men who were, feeling the elephant, and they were
mhm.
they were blind, and so one feels the ear and says it's a fan, and another one feels the
Oh, right.
tail and says it's a rope, right? So to me, like, that's all of our experiences. Like, I'm over here feeling the fan, you're over here feeling the rope. And when we
Hmm.
start to share our experiences, we start to gain a bigger picture of the whole. And so, yeah, I love that you're sharing your experience, and I really appreciate it. And I also recognize that this is probably one of the first times you have shared your experience in this format. So we want to
Yes.
give you a huge thank you, so much gratitude for your willingness to do this.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, yeah, it is a new experience to put all of this esoteric feeling into words. And can I share just one more experience that I had? Because
100%.
it's
Please do.
it's very concrete. One is a few months ago, even, I was having a pretty rough day. A lot had happened. And so I was sitting and meditating because sometimes, I don't know if you've felt this, it gets so quiet every once in a while. It's just so quiet and peaceful. It's like the whole world took a little nap. And so I decided to meditate, and I just decided I was going to invite Archangel Metatron in. And like immediately, I saw this really intense image, basically of me going about my life like struggling essentially. And then it was on a street corner, like it was nighttime, it was rainy, you can imagine. And then it was like felt like Archangel Metatron with my younger self, like 5 years old. This is pretty intense. Is that okay?
That's
Um,
okay.
and so it was like Archangel Metatron brought my 5 year old self there, and my 5 year old self was like terrified of me, like so scared of like who I'd become. And I cried and cried, and that for me is angelic healing in a strange way, because after that I felt so different for and I still do. So there's things like that. Oh, and the last one I want to share is I had such a thorn in my side for Archangel Sandalphon, and I still do a little bit, but I'm sure he's probably okay with it because oh, like intense. Um, I had learned that supposedly Sandalphon had experience on the physical plane. I don't know, and that he had actually walked as a human. And I'd also heard that he has a tendency, if you ask for his help, he will cause crisis so that you change. So this weaves into my awakening story. So I'm living with kind of an acquaintance because I was homeless and it was not good. And so I said, okay, I listened to a Archangel Sandalphon meditation and asked for help. And then the very next morning, this person I was living with had gone through my phone and all my things and just threw a fit, and I had to leave the next
Wow.
morning.
Wow.
And it probably was for the best. But these are
Yeah.
experiences that tell me, obviously, this is real.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes things just have to get to that point where it's crossed the line so
Hmm.
that we can make the changes that are really necessary and for our
Hmm.
highest good.
Yeah.
So interesting. So what does it look like now? Like how are you developing these skills? How are you using these skills? What does it look like now? How are you integrating all of this?
It's I'm getting used to it. I really think there was an incident that really triggered a lot of, I don't know, my intuition or some of these, whatever we call them, psychic abilities. Can I share what that experience was?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is my favorite story to tell, probably out of my entire life. So I will try to keep it brief, okay? Um, it's a bit intense, like I am. So I was living in this historic house in the attic. It was a renovated attic. That's important to the story. And the only way into this apartment was this iron fire escape,
Mm.
and it had rusted holes in it, and that was the only way to get in and out. So one day I was about to be evicted because the place I was working for promised to pay me, and it had been a year, and they weren't.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so, what's that?
I said that's I said, "Oh my goodness."
That's a whole story in itself. But long story short, I remember laying on the floor with my dog, and it was 90 degrees. I didn't have air conditioning, and I had this couch, and this couch smelled terrible. And I've been trying to get rid of this couch for months, but nobody would take the time to help me. carry it down these treacherous metal fire escape steps. And so there was something about that day where I was thinking about how I was trying to keep it all together and trying to be nice when people were literally taking money and food out of my mouth. And something clicked, and I was like, no, I cannot wait around for someone to rescue me or even to be nice about it anymore. And so now don't judge me too much. So, um, when my landlord left, I went to the garage and I found a saw, okay, an electric saw, and I started cutting my couch into three pieces. And it was very intense. I was sweating because it was 90 degrees, and I'm cutting it, and I kept going to the window to see if he was coming back yet. And then, of course, it starts to pour rain. And I'm thinking about everything and just getting more and more angry. And I was never an angry person, ever. And so eventually I get this couch cut in pieces, and each piece is really heavy. So I'm like trying to carry it out my door. And then with this guttural groan, I try to push each piece over the side of the railing into the dumpster. And it's pouring down rain. And after all three of those were thrown, I just remember like collapsing, and it was like a rebirth. I can't even put it into words. It was a feeling of like my soul touched my life for a second and said, "You're meant to be so happy and free, and this is all just pretend." And yeah, in hindsight, it's kind of ironic that the couch is associated with therapy also. It was just
Yeah.
it was an amazing day. I know it sounds strange,
Well,
but
what it feels like to me is you moved a lot of energy that day
yeah,
because you allowed that anger to come forward. You uh, when we move possessions, we move energy. And so when, like even um if for example, if you're having a bad day, like if I'm having a bad day and I go in and I do dishes and I put something in order, I'm moving energy, I'm creating order, and it changes how we feel. You moved some huge energy because you, again, the anger, the heavy pieces, the sawing of it, the like, I'm going to move this energy myself. No one else is going to come along and save me. I'm going to do it. I love that.
it was really empowering. And whenever I hear people talk about their lives, I always think of that, and I always sort of listen for what is their couch moment. And if nothing else, spiritual awakening has taught me like there's a strength in all of us, and even if it isn't pretty, like it is holy. I have There have been moments when I've had to stand up to people, and I wasn't very nice, but I knew I had to. And it's almost like there was this divine um permission to, get angry because it changed my life. So, um
Mm, yeah. What does life look like today? How are you moving forward with all this? And maybe what would be fun to hear is if you have a story or two about, I know that you do some readings and you do some mediumship work, and I'd love to hear just maybe one or two highlights of that work that you've had.
yes. So now uh life is much more calm and peaceful. There's not so much chaos. Um Now, I spent a year on a psychic hotline, believe it or not, and that taught me so much because you have to be really fast and accurate. And nowadays, I guess I go through my life just open. It's not like once in a while I'm noticing repeating numbers. It's just a natural part of my life. I keep my awareness open. And another big thing that is interesting is I don't feel the need to fix people like I used to.
Mm,
And now, when I do readings, even for people online or in person, one thing I think that does help is I can be pretty detached from the outcome. So I can be honest, I guess, and I think that's helped. And also, being in the mediumship program and meeting people that are kind like you and knowing that I'm not alone and that I'm not going crazy, it's been really, yeah.
yeah, wonderful. So, last couple of questions I have for you. And the first one is, do you have um, any spiritual practices that maybe you do on a daily or weekly or monthly basis that help you?
Absolutely. Um, until recently, I've been doing hypnosis groups online twice a week for years, and also energy psychology groups, and they're a lot of fun. And so, one thing I do all the time is related to qigong. It's shaking, like literally just shaking
Mm,
and letting sounds come out. But on a more spiritual level, I do find things to be grateful for, and um, I guess these are so second nature to me. It's interesting to try to, specify them. But for example, if I'm feeling kind of worried or anxious, I'll just naturally take my hands and like smooth out my energy field, like in front of me. I do things like that. And I go out and I balance rocks. I have a YouTube channel and I balance stones and rocks and I talk to the angels and complain sometimes, but also, pray for the world and whatnot. And, you know, especially recently, if I could share with people one thing that really could help, it's considered self hypnosis. And I actually think it's already been created. I think they're called ask formations.
hmm.
And is it okay if I describe how to do that?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. I literally did this yesterday, so I feel pretty confident about it. The idea is that our subconscious mind is constantly listening, of course. Our soul is constantly listening. And when we ask a question, our subconscious mind immediately tries to answer it. So the idea is if we say something in a question, our mind will immediately start to alter our reality to give us an answer. So, for example, if somebody was feeling really worried, what you could do with self hypnosis is you could like focus on your heart and say, how am I already accepting my worry? And I start out there. How am I still lovable even though I'm so worried? How would someone I love in my life talk to me when I'm worried? And then it progresses to how am I instantly and effortlessly worry free?
Mm,
How instantly and powerfully can I feel freedom in this moment? Um, where do I feel joy and gratitude growing in this moment? And when you do that, you literally feel these things happening. Um, and then sometimes I can go pretty deeply. And if people are open to that, something like, how can I accept that part of me wants to be selfish? And how instantly can my angels remind me that I'm imperfect and that's okay? etc. Like things like that.
Mm, I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And before we go, let people know how they can find you. What's the best way for them to contact you?
Thank you. So there's two ways. The first way is you can just email me, and I'm sure we could put my email address in the description box, but it's mlencl22@gmail.com. And then I'm just now launching a psychic intuitive readings healing site, and I can put that in the description box below, where you can go and actually order a reading.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Max. I really appreciate you sharing your story and sharing your experiences, and that it's been a lot. It's been a journey. Um,
You understand that. Yes, thank you so much for I'm humbled that you would even invite me on, and I hope it's been helpful somehow.
of course, I know you to be a beautiful, tender-hearted person with a lot of very um, intuitive gifts. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.